3PNR with Adam R. Welcome to 3PNR. I'm your host, Adam R. And joining me for this episode is Robert Spearing and Earl Gray Anderson. Gentlemen, how you doing?
Doing good. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me. We're in post-talk or pre-talk. A lot of interest. We should cover a little of that in the later on in the episode, that Mandela idea, because, yeah, that's it's true in a lot of ways. We'll get into that later. For me, obviously Bob Crane is one of the ones you guys are discussing. There's one for me as a kid that stands out. Let's open up with this. So, little context for people in case it's their first time. We'll start with Bob. Bob, tell the audience who you are and what your background is.
I'm currently MUFON's Director of International Investigations. I oversee all the investigations outside the United States. I'm also involved with a number of projects that MUFON does. I do the Cases of Interest presentation every year at the MUFON Symposium. I'm involved with Mars, which is our archived paper reports that we've digitized and will be putting out hopefully by Christmas. I've been involved with MUFON University. My background is I went to Fordham University for journalism, film production, propaganda, and public opinion. I have a safety background, forensic safety background from a railroad, and I also did a lot of crazy things like rail traffic controller, two-dimensional air traffic controller. Like a two-dimensional air traffic controller, I was a locomotive engineer. I'm a certified ham radio operator. I have a lot of interests. So I had 3 experiences in my life, all mundane, but they were enough to get me interested in UFOs, and joining MUFON was the best thing I ever did.
Great. You got a lot going on. Earl, what about you?
That's wow. That's quite the bio there, Bob. I'm actually state director for Southern California for MUFON. I've been with MUFON for about 8.5 years now, I guess. 2015 is when my card says I joined. So let's see, retired from 40-year career as a ventilator certified nurse, taking care of quadriplegics mostly. Deep interest in the sciences, mostly astronomy. While growing up, backyard astronomer with telescope out there at 2 a.m., trying to resolve nebulae and all that good stuff. I grew up with a little bug in my ear because my mom worked for Howard Hughes. And when I was about 5 years old, she told me a crazy story about how she worked in this underground facility in the middle of the desert. And she kind of capped it off by saying UFOs, by the way, UFOs and intelligent life in the universe are real. And we already know about who they are and where they're from, and they'll never tell the public. And I kind of grew up with that. She forgot. I think that my mom told me that because she thought I was safe to tell. I was 5 years old. And then later on in grammar school, I started spouting off about it. In fact, in front of the class, I did kind of a show and tell. And I got the lecture from my mom, who had eventually she went back into aerospace, actually as a headhunter for all the various aerospace companies. She kept her high top security clearances despite me going around telling her secrets that I'm sure she signed many NDAs on. So that's where my interest in ufology originated. When she passed in 1999, I knew that I was not going to get the golden ticket from my mom. She expounded a little bit more on that after we saw the movie Star Wars, and then that was zip. She just didn't really say anything else, except to her dying day. She said, well, no, I was being honest with you, and that's what I did, son. And where do you think we hide our secrets? Underground.
It's truth.
So,
and then you fast forward to this current thing, right? So this is where we'll start off. We had this congressional hearing. They had they had the right witnesses there, the whistleblowers, if you want to call them that. Graves, Fravor, and I'm sorry, the third guy was
Crutch.
Yeah. So
Grudge. Yeah.
Grush. There it is. I don't know. I watched it when it happened. I rewatched it a day later. First and foremost, I think all three guys are telling the 100% the truth to what they know. 100%. In fact, David Fravor is one of the people that, for me, my background, I've never witnessed anything. I've always had interest in it. I've always, growing up, I grew up in a Catholic family, but I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt there was life out there somewhere. It's impossible. Especially when you're a kid and you learn about the universe and planets, and then later on you find out there's exoplanets. No doubt. What I took issue with in this congressional hearing is in the background, you see Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, some other miscellaneous people in suits, but ultimately a vacant room. You saw no representation from NASA, Air Force, Navy. I understand they wanted to question these three witnesses and be forthright with the information, but it's still, to me, like a stepping stone towards their quote unquote disclosure, because again, there's very little representation from people who we should, beyond a shadow of a doubt, should have some sort of input and or an opinion on this. And NASA, you think, would be right at the top of that. SpaceX, I don't expect them to be in these congressional hearings. They're a private organization. However, no presence for them either, even as far as ask, because, you want to ask questions. This is NASA in space. You're putting objects in space with people's lives and very expensive material. And when you have witnesses that are military related and they're saying there's things that are utilizing our airspace, you kind of want to know what's up there. So you don't, endanger lives and or damage very expensive equipment, outside of the Tesla that they launched. But so that's part of the issue I took with it. The information seemed nice, but none of it to me was new other than Grush. And even, a lot of his information he has to disclose in a private skiff. So to those naysayers about UFOs, I can see this should be turning people around. They're there. They're real. The question mark is what's controlling them. That's really, there's no doubt UFOs are real at this point for anybody. It's the question of who's at control. So we'll start off with Bob. Bob, what do you think of this congressional hearing?
Well, my opinion is not necessarily MUFON's opinion. All right, I have my own theories about right. Stuff. I just want to be clear on that. Anytime that the intelligence is involved, U.S. intelligence is involved, and Grush is a former intelligence official, you have to look at what the government's doing with one hand while they're doing what they're really doing with the other hand. My personal opinion is that if this guy really had, if he was really a whistleblower coming forth with something like this, they would have put a bullet in the back of his head. So I think to some degree it's orchestrated. Okay. And I was very, very curious about when he talked about the non-human biologics and the off-world craft. Going on my theme that I don't necessarily trust the intelligence community, I have a theory. My theory is that what does he mean by off-world? What does he mean by non-human biologics? There was a book by Michael Crichton 20, 30 years ago called Sphere. They made it into a movie. And it's basically about an aircraft that they find at the bottom of the ocean. And it's an American aircraft made out of composite materials that's been laying on the bottom of the ocean for it came back from 350 years in the future. So let's say we're already on the moon, or let's say in the future we're going to be on the moon, okay? And we manufacture an aircraft on the moon. The molecular composition of that aircraft would be different than the molecular composition of the metals they might use on Earth. So theoretically, it might not be aliens at all. It might be an American craft built off-world. Non-human biologics, that could be the astronauts' broccoli and cheese. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I take Grutch or whatever his name is.
Grush, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to his credit, I one thing I pay attention to is facial expressions, and I paid very close attention to his. I agree with you, and I say this to a lot of my friends who are deep into conspiracy theory. If the government wants you gone, you're gone, no question. They have the resources, they have the abilities. You will disappear. So Is it orchestrated at some level? Yeah. When you're a whistleblower, the way he did it, while they allege that he went through the right channels to become a whistleblower, then he alleged that his life and the life of other people. Well, all right. So I guess it was asked, was at any point or time, did you feel threatened by life and family? And did you know others threatened or maybe killed? And all of these questions were answered in, well, we could discuss this in a closed skiff, which leads the public to believe that there's something happening, whether it be true or not. A number of people who look at his video, and myself included, when he explained that something was happening to him in the form of threat, he did have some facial expression, showing that, yeah, he's under a little duress. To what degree? I don't know. Because again, if they wanted him dead, he'd be dead, period.
And just one more thing, he never saw anything. He's just going on what somebody else told him.
Right.
All right. And that's what we've been getting for 80 years.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's alleging that because of his clearance, he was able to obtain materials to read about. Again, it's hearsay from people that are in and around that group of people. But we've seen this in the past where there's misinformation put out there by officials. There's a gentleman that, if you watch this documentary, ultimately they utilized him for misinformation. He committed suicide. And it was on the behest of one of the Air Force's intelligence people who are playing both sides. So there's a fine line of reality versus what they're leading us to believe. Who I did like through this whole thing, Graves and Fravor spoke very matter of fact. They didn't utilize any opinions. They didn't say or utilize any hearsay. They spoke and these are two pilots who are in the air, and Graves' primary concern is the safety of other pilots. Where Fravor's concern is, why do I not have one of these? So, and that's the Top Gun pilot. And by the way, he wants to fly one. Earl, what do you think? What was your take on it?
I'm back and forth on it. I think, I don't have a whole lot of confidence in the officialdom going and disclosing, just because my mom was so emphatic about it when I was a kid, and later on when I was 19 years old, where she said they will never, ever tell the public. She said, she brought up, the War of the Worlds radio broadcast and how people panicked. And but then again, that was a long time ago that, she said that the last time, I guess it was 1977. So, we're talking, things can change.
Right.
And talking, I was just on Steve Bassett's going to be having a new show, and he interviewed me for pretty extensively for one of the episodes last week. And, Steve, he just posted I think it's 27-page congressional. It actually mentions disclosure in the title, plan for disclosure for 2024, that went out to congressional members, went out to the Senate. And the language in it is different than I've seen in most stuff. I mean, it mentions UAP so many times in this thing. And it's kind of the wording of it does make it sound more like it is talking about something extraterrestrial or, extra dimensional. If you're me, I tend to lean towards the dimensional origin of these craft. But I don't know, I don't know. Maybe something's changed. Maybe they feel like maybe their hands being forced. Who knows? I mean, maybe there's been communication with the entities and they're telling them that you have this long and we're going to appear, so you get ready. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to keep an open mind about it. I'm trying not to be cynical about it. I have just as many reasons to feel cynical about the government going and disclosing their deepest secrets as I do that. Maybe something has changed. So that's where I'm at. I'm kind of in limbo, tell you the truth on it. Well, I'm not making a hard claim that it's going to be either or. We would like to see disclosure. I hope that it's not going to be used as a smokescreen to, I do know that they want to run the narrative of this. That's quite obvious. So what are they going to tell the public, and what are they not going to tell the public? I'm guessing they're if they know anything about the abduction visitation phenomena, they're probably not going to be telling the public much about that.
I mean, I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Go for it.
For me, if I'm in the government and I'm keeping close attention to social media and the behavior of the public at large, I don't know if you want to disclose, because we're so tribal. We're still racist. After watching this debacle with Trump, like we're basically going to have civil war over something, as stupid as the leader of the free world, which is crazy. But what really, really kicked me and reminded me why people as a whole cannot handle this kind of information. I'm in a pool hall, and, without saying this individual's name, he's very religious. He's born again Christian. He's a nice guy. He's an older gentleman. He's like, hey, you're doing a podcast, you talk about UFOs, and he goes, it's the enemy is planting this information. And so I asked him, I said, let me ask you a question, sir. If, let's say, a UFO did land right at your house and introduce yourself as, he's an alien. He tells you, I'm from another world, I'm a different species, et cetera, et cetera. And I kid you not, even with that proof in his face, the handshake and all, it is the work of Satan.
There's people that think that in Congress. I mean, that's one of the problems I heard, that ATIP and that whole group back some years ago, which, Bigelow is involved in and all that.
Right.
That there were people in the government that felt like it was against their religion to even look into this.
It's crazy. I mean, unfortunately, I hear, as much as I would like disclosure, and you and Bob would want like some disclosure and learn, and we want transparency from the government. I think we're thinking in terms of the United States as well. Like, we're here, we're American, we want to know. Consider other countries that will literally shoot off a missile at the idea of a foreign body from outside this planet landing here. They're not going to ask questions. They're going to start. You remember the movie Independence Day, when the newscast is telling the people to stop shooting their weapons at the UFO? I mean, it's not far fetched.
It's not far fetched.
Yeah, it was L.A. It was Los Angeles. They were shooting at them. It's tough because we're still a society that doesn't behave like a species. We're still behaving like individuals, and we're still letting things like, like race, religion, and political ideology divide us. And not just divide us by thought, but with violence. The worst kind of divide. So I would like to know more. And I think I think what you said and what Bob's alluding to is that they're utilizing this in small spoon feeds to see how they could get the public to become accepting of the idea of it. But some of the diehard religious, again, like, even if you had an alien walk up to them, the fact that they would say is the work of the enemy, or their terminology, Satan, that's mind blowing. That's and I'm not trying to bash religion, but that's really an ignorant way to live. It scares me.
Those people are going to be like that regardless, though. I think that no matter if it's non-disclosure, they're going to blame everything on the devil, and if it's disclosure, they're going to blame everything on the devil.
Yeah,
it's given the devil a lot of power in the world, by the way. Blaming everything on him. But I don't know. I mean, I honestly, if you had asked me, and you probably did a couple years ago, if I thought disclosure was ever going to happen, I was pretty adamant about it. I said no, and I honestly, I don't know.
I don't
Something
think
may have changed. I guess we'll find out. We'll see what happens.
I think we're on a timer, is what it is. I think because if for the government to actually, I said this a lot too. It's not. I'd rather them not use the word disclosure and disclose things, because we all know it's not in the foreseeable future as far as I know. But the better part is use the word acknowledgement. And that's what they're doing now. They're acknowledging they're here. Are they taking it very seriously? You could say they are. And, there's the gentleman that was asking the questions of the three witnesses, and he was, saying hello to his wife and wishing an anniversary or whatever it was. And I didn't see them taking it very seriously. The level of professionalism slipped. There was a few guys that asked questions, Martinez and et cetera, where you could see they really want to dig to it and they want to, stipulate to the facts. But I didn't see a serious face there. And again, the lack of presence from other agencies that should be concerned with objects in our airspace they were not available.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had one of my field investigators who was not working for me anymore, but she was also working for NASA, and she told me point blank, NASA does not understand MUFON's mission statement. And our mission statement is pretty basic. It's, the study of UFOs for the, benefit of humanity. That's it. That's and they can't wrap their head around that. Huh. But I think that, they've got their narrative, and they've had it since 1953, the Robertson panel, as we'll deal with this with ridicule. We'll make fun of everybody. We'll discount the whole phenomenon. We'll, get our scientists out to make fun. You see, what's his name, Tyson they're still doing this, trotting out the scientists to make light of the phenomenon.
Well, they did that to Avi Loeb. They did that to him. I should say they attempted it. He just doesn't give a shit. He was like, I'm going to get the information. I'm going to put together a program, and I could care less what the science community thinks about me, and you know what? He's right.
Well, good for him, good for him. And I think, I'm not going to, I'm honestly not going to say that disclosure will not happen. I think that maybe they are dripping it out there because they feel like there's one philosophy that if you notice, the guys in Congress that are usually fighting with each other in the House and stuff, they were actually working together. When they had the congressional hearings, you saw people from both sides of the aisle that were passionate about it and that wanted information out there. And so maybe that's the one philosophy, it's like Ronald Reagan when he spoke to the United Nations, and he said, if there was a threat from outer space, how quickly we would forget our differences.
Right.
And maybe this is what they're kind of testing out.
Well, bear this in mind. Both sides of the aisle were inquisitive. They were both making inquiries. They were both, pretty optimistic in their question asking. But you keep this in the back of your head. They're there learning, and we don't know what narrative they're going to use this for later on. They're there just to absorb information. How they're going to use it later. Hypothetically speaking, an airliner full of people have a close incident with a UFO. Who knows how they're going to utilize that in political, like for the idea of being elected. Well, our president here, he's very aware of this situation. He's acknowledging it, and we're going to do something about it and look further into it. And they're going to use that for votes. It's just what politics, we still behave like Romans. It's not very different.
I know. I've noticed Tim Burchett is already kind of politicizing it. And for a long time he wasn't. And now he a little bit, kind of bashing the other team, and they're not doing things right or not taking. I don't know.
Yeah,
let's hope that everybody that's in government isn't evil.
Well, they're not. But if there is a congressional hearing regarding the idea of there being a weapon of mass destruction off, not far from the United States, I assure you there would be, and this is where the threat level to me, because this is what they say now. It's a national security threat that they're using this language. So we'll take this in this perspective. If you're in a congressional hearing, you're speaking about UAP, UFOs, and one guy's, kind of making light. He's like, happy anniversary or birthday to my wife. And, I was upset to hear that because it let me know this is how serious you're taking it. If they were talking about a weapon of mass destruction off the shore of the United States, I promise you we wouldn't be speaking anniversaries and flopping around with small gesture. There's going to be serious talk, and there's going to be a huge presence. Every agency is going to be present for this.
Just let me say, going back to where I don't necessarily trust the Intelligence Committee, I'm very happy that Congress is looking at it seriously. Okay.
Right.
But the narrative has changed from us being tinfoil hat people. And you see new players coming in like Arrow and NASA and Enigma Labs. And part of the reason you're seeing that now is I think they've realized that this is a cash cow. All right. So I'm very skeptical about if they're truly trying to get to the bottom of it, or if they've recognized that they can get billions and billions of dollars to do this research,
Right.
all right, for their own benefits. Not only that, because they're not an open source like MUFON or NUFORC or CUFOS or NICAP, they don't have to share their information. All right. And I find that to be very dangerous for the UFO community.
Yeah, that is dangerous. And that's upsetting. And I've certainly thought about that aspect too. I mean, what if they take the whole tamale and it's ours and we're keeping it,
Right.
Right. We've seen that.
Could very well be the case.
This has been demonstrated in the past, exactly what Bob's saying. We create a threat to create funding for the threat. And where the money goes, unknown.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yep, that's exactly what I'm saying. Now, let me just throw in another thing. I just happened to come across one of our MUFON field investigators had a very interesting, Mindy Toutfest had a very interesting letter in a collection she has from Werner von Braun to somebody where he says he didn't believe in UFOs, okay? And Dr. Carol Rosen, who was von Braun's secretary when he was old and dying, he pretty much was under the impression that this was all related to military Star Wars like expenditures because they saw it was a cash cow. And he said that, there'd be terrorism in the future. He was saying this in like 1976, and 2001 happened, 9/11. He also mentioned asteroids they would use as a way to put things in space. And what they're doing now is coming up with ways to deflect asteroids. But is that just the cover story? Right. And he actually alludes that the final phase that these corporations and intelligence communities will do would be the fake alien invasion. All right. And I mean, when you see that Elon Musk is putting 60,000 satellites around the earth for internet, that makes me ponder, what do you need 60,000 satellites? Because Starlink came out of the Strategic Defense Initiative with Ronald Reagan. Okay.
Right.
And she even alludes that before Reagan, they were already developing these space-based weapons. So I think there's a lot more going on that meets the eye, especially with the intelligence community and the corporations. All right. The bottom line is, I do think that there is a phenomenon. I will never say it's demons. I will never say it's time travelers. I will never say it's aliens. I will never say it's Silurians under the sea because I don't know.
Right.
All right. But there's also a component to it with the government and corporations that I don't trust as far as you can throw them.
I agree with you. And I'll tell you why. Because the government's job, so here's how the government job should be. It should be, we're voting the best guy for the job to take care of us. However, that's not how it plays out. It's a popularity contest filled with people with their own ideas, their own ideologies, and they force it upon. An example, individual votes for president really don't make a difference. There's these different levels to it. And at the end of the day, and to support a lot of what you're saying, do you remember when China was testing their hypersonic missiles and we didn't bat an eye? We didn't even respond to that. And then you fast forward some months later, we had one of our Navy vessels use a laser to shoot a drone out of the sky, as a test. And then here's the truth. Whether a hypersonic missile's fast or not, it's still not the speed of light.
Correct.
And
very good point.
And so you go back to Ronald Reagan in the Star Wars program, and that was mainly to protect us from missiles, ballistic missiles coming to America. And then that just fell away somewhere in the 90s. You just stopped hearing about it. We know the program still ran. We know there was launching up there. We know we're putting and Elon, putting 60 satellites up there. You have to give some kind of credence to this, because if there were concern for hypersonic missiles and we really didn't show concern, and we have all these satellites, 60 satellites, if they have
60,000.
60, yes, 60,000, sorry.
60,000.
If they
right.
if they all have a laser on them, what good are missiles at all at that point? Missiles are hypersonic, super duper hiker, not the speed of light. We're going to knock it down, which brings me back to, again, when we have all this very expensive equipment in our orbit, and then we have these objects in our atmosphere and orbit that are moving. When you hear the pilot speak, nothing we have. You didn't see a big presence in that congressional hearing of people that should be concerned about it. And when it comes down to what is behind the wheel of these objects, it's still a question mark. I'm not discounting the abductees and the people who have gone through what they've gone through. I have my theories on that, but as of right now, there's no real concrete evidence that it's something that's steering these things as biological. Like, if you guys remember when you first met me, my theory on the gray aliens is that they're biological robots, and that their consciousness is either uploaded or downloaded from these beings, and then perhaps maybe the bigger ones, the taller ones, are biological. But even then, in everything I've read, and I've read feverishly, when I had Kathleen Marden on the show, before I had her on, I read nonstop to the point where it was affecting my dreams. The taller ones that seem to be biological, the majority of the reports reflect on them being there, coming through the wall, or translucent in a way, which means, in my opinion, it's a very sophisticated hologram. And we're actually considering that now, where there's talk, if you watch a lot of these documentaries, to explore Mars and map it out. We're coming with the idea of having, remote access, smaller vehicles on that planet that we could almost remotely use with our minds. And that's not fiction. We're actually thinking about that. Now, if you had 20,000 years or however long these beings from wherever they came, dimensional or otherwise, they have 20,000 years on us. Imagine our world right now, guys, with 20 more thousand years of technology on it. It's insane what we'll be able to do. AI is starting to demonstrate its power. So, yeah, with the government, are they ever going to speak the truth? I think Bob's right. With the intelligence community, I think they'll let us know what they feel like letting us know.
Yeah, I agree. They're not going to give us the whole
right
tamale. No, that's I don't believe that's going to happen.
Unless these beings decide to go above their head.
There's nothing for them to gain from doing that. I mean, you'd have to look at it, what do they have to gain by doing this? I mean, that's the biggest problem, I think, with total disclosure. And maybe this is why they keep changing the terminology from flying saucers to UFOs to UAP. It's unidentified anomalous phenomena. They even changed what UAP, the acronym, means.
Well, I mean,
okay, this is something I wonder about. I mean, I do tend to lean towards the interdimensional origin of UFOs, just because it makes a lot of sense. Makes more sense with just what I experienced. Explains certain videos that I've seen where craft seemed to disappear into a little hole in the sky that then closes up. It would explain some of the weird, Jacques Vallée's good old Magonia stuff. Chris Abeck has written, some books, like he wrote the one with Vallée, Wonders in the Sky, where, it brings up UFO sightings from, thousands of years ago. So, I think the element of this has probably always been here. Is there an extraterrestrial element? How about, what if they use self-replicating von Neumann machines?
Sure.
Where they can, if they've been doing this for 1 million years, they can pretty much seed the whole galaxy by now. It's just keeps self-replicating, ad infinitum. Now, what if you send out these factory ships and you find a planet that harbors life? Well, you park your ship there. You grow your aliens on the ship. There's your biological grays,
right,
or even your tall grays. Perhaps we're dealing with AIs, and would we even know the difference? I mean, is the whole idea behind the Avatar film possible? Perhaps they have a way of temporarily embodying these temporary simulacrums, and they can do, abductions or whatever they need to do,
Well, on that
carry
point,
their work out. You never see aliens in spacesuits, for
right,
instance.
right.
It's
So
not like they're worried about our biosphere or germs,
right,
and that doesn't make any sense.
That's what.
Really.
So I'm glad you said that. I'm super glad you said that. Because again, considering the factor that wherever your biology is from, even if you go to a planet that is semi close to our atmosphere, there's the variable of it's a bigger planet, the gravity's greater, even it might have oxygen, but at what degree can we actually breathe it? Would it be poisonous to us? What about infection? What about bacteria? What about virus? And so I'm glad you said that about Avatar. If you look at today's technology, everything we have, cell phones, FaceTime, Bluetooth, these were all the product of the imagination and the movies that were before the time. Life imitates art. It's just a way of it. Like things you saw in Star Trek, and they're talking with these things in their hand, that flip phones kind of thing. It's later on becomes reality. And that's what I say about science. Science starts as the imagination of a child, the theory of a college student, and then the science discovery of the elite. That's how it works in that order. What we have to do is a rule out phase. Like, so Bob, for you, new discoveries in your investigations.
Oh, we're like doing a left turn here. You into a different topic.
Well, I'm doing this.
Switched on us.
I'm gonna tie it together for you guys, because we're on this topic now, and so there's got to be a point of origin, right? There's an evolution of how we come to find out information, and like
I
said,
watch this guy, Bob.
I see that. I see that.
Because what happens is we go down this road where we're discussing current situations, current ideas, but there's got to be a point of origin. So what people that are listening don't realize is the two of you, you touch a lot of information, a lot of investigations, a lot of reports, Bob, especially with the videos. And so you tie it in towards later of why we come to this train of thought. So good.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I've been working on all year is the week after the Chinese balloon was shot down. Remember, the Chinese wanted that balloon back. All right. Then we shoot down 3 things over North America. And after 5 days, they say, we'll never find them. All right. So my theories have always been, were these things just weather balloons, and it's so embarrassing that they'll never show us the camera footage from the fighter jets, because they're never gonna. All right. Or, if it was Chinese or Russian, why didn't the Russians and the Chinese want that object back that went down in Lake Huron? All right. Or is it something so exotic they don't know what it is, so they can't tell us? Or it got away because its technology was so far superior to ours. But here's the thing. Remember when the Titan submersible imploded and went down in the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean going to the Titanic? The search field for that was the size of Connecticut. And they found it in 5 days in 12,000 feet of water and retrieved it in another day. All right. But the octagon object that went down in Lake Huron went down in 145 feet of water. All right. They couldn't find that thing. All right. And the fact that it was an octagon was interesting. So I went into the CMS and I looked up octagons, decagons, pentagons, and it ended up being the final part of my presentation at the Cases of Interest presentation at the symposium. There are so many cases of octagons, all right? And not only that, but in at least one MUFON case this year, 2 years prior to the shoot down over Lake Huron, which was near St. Ignace, Michigan, we had a MUFON case in exactly the same place of an octagon. So there's something going on. And most of these cases were near military bases. So, is it foreign adversaries? I don't know. Is it, extraterrestrial technology? I don't know. Is it interdimensional? Which is interesting, Earl, because they have the ability to turn from blue orbs into concrete octagons. They have the ability to disappear. They have the ability to cloak themselves. It's like, where are they coming from? What are they? All right. And why is the government just absolutely ignoring the biggest story of the year, these shoot downs, and putting up, this whistleblower to talk about non-human biologics and crash craft that he heard about. So I just see deflection all over the place. But that's what I've been working on for the past several months. These octagon-shaped objects, because without a doubt, these may come from another dimension. They may come from space. In one case, a MADAR unit in Kentucky actually triggered at 4:15 a.m. in the morning. The same time, an octagon was reported over Louisville, Kentucky, in a MUFON case. And a MADAR unit suggests that something came in from the atmosphere. It causes sudden drops or rises in barometric pressure, and also makes a compass go crazy because of an electromagnetic field. So, I do think that there is some sort of technology at play here that's far, far more advanced than us.
Yeah, I would have to agree that the octagon one has me stumped, because you're right. 145 foot of water. Bob, I watched a documentary back in, I think it was 2012 or 2011, where they were looking for some chipmunk they thought to be extinct, and they're utilizing at that time the drones and then the thermal imaging. A chipmunk is how little that thing is. They found it. They found one. They did it in a day and a half. This little itty bitty thing, and it's a huge forest, and it's not a huge population of these creatures. I remember watching this documentary in absolute awe. So the idea that something crashes in a lake that's of substantial size in 120, and then, again, the other submersible, 12,000, that's crazy. That's nonsense. The Chinese balloons, why didn't China come try to recover their balloons separate from the octagon? That data is cloud-based, so they got the data. But this octagon, however, that's intriguing. And now that you say it, you barely heard anything about it in the news.
It's a dead story.
Yeah,
you're never going to hear anything
till
about
you
it
just
again.
said it. I forgot about it completely. It completely slipped my mind until you brought it up again.
You also mentioned basically we had cases last year over the Atlantic where small objects almost collided with commercial airliners. And when Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick was at the Arrow hearings, he specifically said that in their 800 cases in their database, and by the way, MUFON has 134,000 cases in our database, they were looking for objects smaller than 15 feet, 5 meters. All right. So I have in the MUFON CMS over the past several years at least 5 videos of small objects that were analyzed on video, because commercial drones had captured these objects flying by, and they're small. They're smaller than Volkswagens. All right. And they're flying at Mach 7. You can't even see them until you slow down the video. They're going 5,000 miles per hour. They're the size of a Volkswagen. They seem to be roundish, if not diamond-shaped. They have no visible propulsion trail. So what is the size of a Volkswagen that can fly at low Earth altitude? And they're all over the world. These things are in the Netherlands. They're in Wisconsin. They're in South Carolina. All right. They're going 5,000 miles per hour, and they're the size of an engine block. All right. What is that? All right. We don't have anything like that. I don't think anybody has anything like that. No.
And I'll tell you firsthand, China and Russia, if they had this technology, they would not suppress it. They would rub it in our face, because there would be that case of, what are you going to do about it? And I'm glad you said, because, those very objects you're talking about, I was reading about it. They almost started a conflict in the Middle East between a couple of states there. There was accusations of what's this doing our territory. I remember reading that there was almost a small war erupting over this, and I think we caught the blame for some of it. But yeah, you're right. What could do that kind of altitude? That's crazy.
And is it any different from the old Foo Fighters, though? I mean,
these are metallic, whatever they are. Yeah.
Yeah, and no matter where you are in altitude or in the atmosphere, when you're hitting Mach 7, the sound barrier is being broken. You're hearing this, but these are doing this relevantly silent.
Yeah, which is impossible.
And it would create, when you're going through the atmosphere that fast, it should create a plasma field around the object, and it's not.
Fireball.
It's not even a sonic boom. All right. No.
Which,
you turn it 90-degree turn at Mach 7, you're going to have a fireball, I mean, that's just basic Newtonian physics.
Well, then see, now you have this what Bob's talking about. These investigations tie into what we were talking about earlier, and it goes to the question: are they interdimensional? When people need to understand, when you're speaking in terms of interdimensional or using dimensions, you're talking quantum physics. And I watch a lot of documentaries. I love space science. I love it. We predict in the next decade or two that we're going to have self-replicating nanotechnology that's going to explore the galaxy for us. Because we're not going to be able, there's, the idea of freezing ourselves, going to another star system, that technology, whether it exists or not, there's variables like when you're in space, there's particles that penetrate the ship, radiation poisoning, resources to feed the community that are going to do this. But it's more plausible to send self-replicating robots out there, or as you said, something you could upload or download your consciousness to. There's a lot of stuff in that we're theorizing right now that's going to come to light eventually. But the good tie-in there is when you hear what Bob's talking about, these small 15, not very big objects cruising around low altitude at high speed, not disrupting anything around it. You're talking a whole beyond next level technology, So it's tough. It really is tough because there's so many people out there, even if they saw this thing, you're going to have that split community between it's something America's doing. It's the devil, you're not going to get, it's going to be weird. So what about you, Earl? What have you come across over the last year?
Oh goodness. It's been a busy one. It's been a very, very busy year. Mostly my year has been kind of creating a little MUFON community here in Los Angeles. We weren't having in-person meetings for years because of the COVID virus and all of that. And about 6 months ago, we started doing, I took it upon myself to try to do a meeting every month, and to have good speakers. And so, and I've seen a little community kind of grow up out of that. And I think we missed 1 month during the symposium, and I got lots of emails from people. It's like, oh, I missed the meeting, blah, 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 So apparently, it's meaningful to people. And I guess there's been a real hunger for that. And, I've been able to get people like Paul Hynek, Bob Solis is speaking this month. I've trying to work things out with Steve Bassett for possibly November. So that's kept me really busy. As far as my my investigatory work goes, that's always on and always that keeps me. I don't know. I supposedly I retired a few years ago. Haha. Not really. I'm a lot busier than I've ever been before. But I recently I just really notice how it seems like my cases sometimes that synchronicity seems to work really well for me. And meaningful coincidences seem to be at play, which I can't explain. But, I once, a friend of mine told me, well, when synchronicities happen for you, that's ET's way of saying you're on the right path. And maybe that is true. But I had a friend of mine, her father is presiding judge in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And I'm not going to mention names or anything. I probably shouldn't have even said that.
No, you're good. There's plenty of those guys.
But anyway, but she saw a crescent-shaped object hovering over a field. And this is not a UFO person. This is a musician person. I've, used to play guitar 4 years ago and stuff like that. Very serious person. Background is like, Mayflower Society and stuff like that. And her father is very important in the court systems. But anyway, she sent me this photo and said, well, what would you make of this? And she didn't tell me anything around it. And I'm zooming in on it. You had to zoom in on it. It was just like a little distant dot. And by God, it looked like Kenneth Arnold's Flying Crescent from 1947, like they saw, rounding Mount Rainier in Washington State. And she said, well, this thing hung just stationary in the sky for about 5 minutes. And then when it took off, it just took off all of a sudden. If I had blinked, I would have thought that it had simply disappeared. But no, it took off. I could watch it like instantaneously. It was gone. And so anyway, she drove over to this field. She's not a shy woman. She drove over to this field, and by the time she got there, there was the black helicopter with no insignia on it that was hovering over this copse of trees. And she said that she watched the helicopter go behind the trees. It was very noisy. It was a helicopter, and then suddenly you couldn't hear anything. The helicopter didn't land. It didn't fly off. It's like, well, what the heck? What? All right. So what was that? So just a very strange story. Well, lo and behold, I had another guy that put in a case locally here where he and a friend saw an object that looked exactly the same as what she got in her photograph, which is one of the better UFO photographs I've ever seen, I have to say. I have to work with probably my friend Jesse Peak, who's out in the Philadelphia area. Yeah, and work together on this because I think the two cases may be related. But I have to talk my friend from Gettysburg to put in a case first. She's thinking about it. I think that she probably will.
Can I see that photo, or just privately?
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I mean, it looks just like Kenneth Arnold, like what he described. It's like a perfect crescent shape with sharpened end, like wings, but they aren't wings. It's like a stylized crescent moon. And in the middle of it, you see a little cupola, like a little cockpit kind of thing in the middle. It is the weirdest, darndest thing I ever saw. And then these two guys saw something similar, and they had a weird experience with a helicopter. This happened about a month before, where they watched an Osprey land across the street from this guy's house in a residential area, which is illegal. You can't do that. Okay, there are a million reasons why, even if you're having problems, I mean, it would have been all over the news. It would have been all the talk of the town. But they watched this thing land, and it seemed quieter than most helicopters. It was unmarked. The glass of the helicopter was blacked out. And these guys reacted really weird. The way that he explained it, it almost sounded like the Oz effect to me, like sounds became muffled, time became weird to them, and then just this weird helicopter story. And then a month later, they see this thing flying across the sky that looks exactly like what my friend in Gettysburg saw.
It's by description. So I don't know if you guys remember this video. I'm trying to find it now. I can't seem to find it. But there was a video of a UFO, and they zoomed in on it, and you could see the occupants in this cockpit.
It was in Turkey.
Turkey, yeah. And by what you're describing, and even I remember when I first saw the video, it was the same description of that from the 40s. Yeah, that video from Turkey, like he zooms in, you can see the occupants sitting there, and it's almost like as you described she described where it would be. It's got my attention because that's not like an isolated description. That's a pretty popular one.
May I interject?
Yes.
Two things. Right now, MUFON, we're creating something called the Project Aquarius Library. It's going to be, the first part's going to be Mars, our old paper reports that we've redacted so that we keep everybody's name secret who is a witness. And the second part of it is going to be a gallery of witness sketches from the CMS. We have 6,000 sketches. I can't tell you, Earl, Adam, how many Kenneth Arnold looking boomerang shaped objects. They're all like that.
Right.
It's curved in the front, and in the back it's got the little point. It's like there's dozens of them. People are still seeing that till this day. All right. And the second thing I want to say, when you started telling me about these helicopters, I got to tell you, so I live up in the Pocono Mountains in a forest. Okay. And there's a house next to me on one side, house on next to me. Behind me is what's called green belt. There's nothing back there but woods and wolves. All right. And one night I'm out watching the stars because I like to do this. This is about 3 months ago. And behind my house, I saw lights coming from behind a neighbor's house. Blue and red lights, and I'm saying, what the heck is that? I'm in the middle of nowhere, and this was just over the tree line late at night, and it went behind my house. So I got up out of a chair and I looked, and when they came out from behind my house, maybe 100 yards out from me, I could hear very, very faintly propellers. All right, so I said, there's some sort of helicopters flying low behind my house in the middle of nowhere, but their propellers were somehow muted. All right, they were able to sound almost silent. So, what does a ufologist do? They pull out their Flight Radar 24 app on their phone, and so I look to see if they're there, but they're not there because they're too low. They're under the radar. But what I see coming towards my house at 5,000 feet in altitude is a huge C-130. All right, and it's gonna go right over my house. I'm going 5,000 feet. This thing's gonna rattle the windows right out of my house, and I'm watching it get closer and closer on Flight Radar 24, and I'm not hearing anything. All right, and I watch it as it on the Flight Radar app goes right over my house, but it never did. There was nothing. It was a phantom C-130.
Huh.
That's not the first time. So where I live in Florida, on the west coast of Florida, the Gulf area, the Coast Guard do a lot of test flights out there. You see their helicopters or planes, they're constantly in flight. They're constantly touch and go over. There's also MacDill Air Force Base here in the Tampa area. And so I later found out that they use the channels. They fly over water and out into the Gulf, and they do a lot of test flying out there, et cetera. And it's funny you say that, because when I was a kid, I lived in Palm Harbor, which is really like maybe a mile away from the coast. And there's this guy, older gentleman, his name was Ron. He lived in our neighborhood. Never saw the guy again, but he said so. Because when you said that, it stood out to me right away. He said he saw a plane when he was out. Him and his wife used to sit out on the beach late night, and they'd stargaze or whatever. And he said something along those lines where he saw a plane, but when it passed over, it almost like it went away, and there was no sound. And he never said anything like that again. But so his kid, I was hanging out with his kid, we used to play on skateboards. But I heard him talking about it, and he mentioned us, and that's Bob saying that is the first time I've heard that since I was a kid. That an airplane seemed to be phantom to him. And that's the first thing that hit my mind when he said that. I got like a little nostalgic moment of being on my skateboard and hearing Ron talk about this. That's bizarre. It makes me wonder, I should look into that, because that too cannot be an isolated incident. It can't be. So Bob, let me ask you, since the balloon thing, have reports gone up, or are they still level?
You're never going to know. All right. There's so many different reasons why you can't trust UFO statistics. All right. First of all, when MUFON was in an Ancient Aliens episode in February, there was a tremendous spike in UFO reports right after that. All right. Because people realized there's a place to go to do it. When Enigma began taking people's reports, all right, and we don't know what they do with them necessarily. We don't know if the amount of reports that MUFON's getting is accurate, or is there bleed off somewhere.
Right.
All right, if there's a famous incident like the balloon thing, you'll get a spike after that. So UFO statistics over a year are really, really unreliable. Okay, you'll never know if there's a true spike or not. Only if you get a flap in a certain area of the country, like a town, and it's over a 5-day period where there's numerous ones, we see the spike over a week in one location, then that something unusual went on. But over the course of a year around the world, you'll never ever get accurate statistics anymore. As a matter of fact, this week, Ring, the doorbell camera company, they launched a contest that they're going to give away $1 million first prize to anybody that captures a UFO on their Ring phone. Do you realize how many videos MUFON's not going to get now in the month of October?
Yeah.
So you're never going to be able to statistically analyze periods of time, all right, year over year with UFOs.
You know, you're right.
We're not supposed to
That's
accept ring videos as evidence anyway, because there's no witness. There's no witness to interview. It's an automatic camera, you know.
Right.
I've had to explain that to quite a few people, and plus those ring cameras, every darn flying insect looks like an orb, you know.
Spider webs.
I know,
like rods.
What's gonna be bad? Well, I'll tell you what is bad is like China. They have cameras everywhere. They have a social thing out there where they monitor their citizens day in and day out. There is literally cameras on every inch of that country. Well, at least the populated areas. How much stuff do they capture that MUFON and other agencies don't hear about? Because they don't communicate. They don't collaborate with us, period. If you go to like China and like Korea, like South Korea, it's either they don't care, because do you hear a lot of reports coming from anywhere in Asia? 5
reports a year we get from China.
That's it, right? Yeah. You would think
they have an active UFO phenomenon there.
Well, yeah,
I teach my college class. I teach is over at Otis College of Art and Design. I teach a class in ufology there. But a lot of my students are from mainland China. And what they'll tell you is that we have just as active of a UFO phenomenon in China as you have here, but it doesn't make the press.
Right.
It's pushed down. It's tamped down.
Yeah, it's compartmentalized. And so I have a friend that lives in China. He's a pool player. He travels all over the globe for tournaments, and in short, there was a discussion back and forth on Facebook Messenger about, because he saw the podcast. And he's like, you do a podcast. So one of the topics I cover is ufology. And I asked him, like, well, don't you guys see anything over there? Any programs, anything on TV? He goes, there's no TV shows here that speak of the subject. We don't have our own. We don't even see yours. And, they're limited to what they could watch on the internet. And it's not till they come here for travel is that they discover this whole realm of information, whether it be entertainment or investigative journalism. It's I'm not going to say it's a major problem because it's a communist state. What could we do?
But, well, I know that in the 70s, Vallée wrote a book on Soviet UFOs, and what's his name, Colonel Wendell Stevens and Paul Dong, they wrote a book on Chinese UFO reports. But that's the 70s, and I've never seen much out of China since.
Beijing Airport. Now that was a multi-person sighting. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of people reported seeing that as a cigar-shaped UFO that was over the airport. One of my students, in fact, the current assignment, this semester, it's my 4th semester teaching at Otis. I'll have my students find a UFO case. Because everybody knows somebody with a UFO story. And if you don't, all you have to do is go on social media and say, hey, who has a UFO story? So they've always been able to get a case, somebody, and I'll tell them, it doesn't have to be, it can be an IFO, and you can prove that it's an IFO. I just want you to play field investigator with me here. If it's a UFO, I want you to make your case for that. And so one of my students last year, she had her old teacher in Beijing, mainland China, that she was still in touch with. And her teacher was there at the airport and was an eyewitness to the cigar-shaped craft that was hovering and flashing lights down on the tarmac below. And she said, yeah, that was not a plane. That was nothing. It was just hanging there, just massive tonnage. And it was so just kind of emotional hearing this account. Of course, the student had to translate for us, but anyway, it's a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, I'd spoken to Joseph Jordan of MUFON. Yeah, I'm sure if you're not familiar with him, he's the representative in South Korea. And, I've had him on a couple times, and I asked him, like, what are the reports like in South Korea? And he's like, they're not very many. And I asked why. And his explanation is that the people out there are so goal driven for their only concern is success. Their faces are not looking up. They're looking in their phones, their tablets, computers. They're around the clock working hard out there to be successful. So I got the impression that they're just too busy to report them or even be bothered with it. But then you flip the coin and you hear about Australia, and we don't hear enough about Australia, but there's a lot of sightings in Australia, a lot going on there. So, finally, so I'll give you guys this. I know in August, September, and October of 2025, I'm going to be on the road filming. I'm doing 2 documentaries. One's going to be in with law enforcement and homicide, and the other one's going to be in ufology and some of the other mysteries. So I'm going to simultaneously record both. So I had to sit down, and I have you guys as a network I'm going to build for when I'm out there, and make a map and get a realistic timeline of how long it's going to take me to film. By the end of that, it was something like 3 years. Like there were so many places. So I have to really narrow down what I'm going to do, because the sightings are here in Florida on the East Coast. I was surprised to hear how many ufology reports come out of that, military and civilian. It's tremendous. So my hat's off to MUFON and members of MUFON that take these reports in, because when, just by the research I did, I was like, there's no way I could cover all the information I want to cover. It would have to be a docu-series that would go on for the foreseeable future just to cover the surface of it. So there's a lot that's attached to this. Like Bob, for you with NASA, I know you do a little research into NASA. Why are we not hearing more from NASA in regards to the UAP phenomena?
Because personally, I don't think NASA knows what they're doing. All right, and when they're not knowing what they're doing, they're like putting blemishes on moon photographs so we can't see what's really there. When they had the NASA hearings a couple of months ago, NASA's conclusion was, well, we don't think it's aliens, but we don't know what it is, which is just a ludicrous answer. All right. So if it's not aliens, it's obviously something else exotic. All right. Or they would have said, we think it's man-made, which they did not say. A lot of times, NASA and the government and the corporations will say, MUFON should get out of their business because we're amateurs and we don't know what we're doing. We're not amateurs. We're volunteers, and we're highly qualified volunteers, airline pilots, FBI agents, photo analysts. I don't think NASA has a clue what they're doing, and NASA should just stick to satellites that monitor climate conditions and putting rovers on Mars. All right, they have no business being in the UFO business.
Some years ago, do you guys remember in 2012 there was going to be a special on, I think it was Discovery Channel, where they were going to have some astronauts, current ones, and they were supposed to. I remember them advertising it as they were going to come on, and they were going to discuss something they saw, and nothing. It never came to fruition. In fact, I'd never even heard of it again. I remember I'm fairly certain it was on Discovery Channel, and I remember I was ready to tune in for this, and nothing. I never even heard about it again. In fact, one of those other things I just completely forgot about up until I was doing, some research before you guys were coming on, and I came across them. Like, oh yeah, I remember the names, but I never heard about the program again, or even the release of an interview. So maybe not NASA at the leadership level, but some of these astronauts and other people that work with them, they have to.
For sure, the astronauts. I mean, Gordon Cooper had a ton of stories, and they were very, very intriguing stories. I've spoken with people who knew one of the astronauts on an ISS mission, where they actually told this person I know that they filmed an object outside the ISS for 45 minutes. You never hear about that. All right. So I believe that a lot of astronauts have seen UFOs. Some of the astronauts, though, will deny it. Okay. They'll say, I never saw anything. But some of them, like Gordon Cooper, have come forward. McDivitt, on one of the Gemini flights, took a photograph of what looks like a long silverish cylinder in space. So yes, astronauts, I put credence in if they say that they saw a UFO. NASA management, they don't know what they're doing.
Especially at the leadership level. I mean, a prime example.
They're out of job if UFOs are real, because their propulsion devices are obsolete. What do you need NASA for now? If you can get to a plant, any of the planets in half an hour using the ramjet or whatever, technology that we would suddenly have, or 0 point energy, and that's the same thing. I mean, Seth Shostak, I've had the pleasure of debating him in the Alien Con green room. And, the guy was literally kind of wringing his hands when we were he did not want to be there. But, what it came down to was I more or less, I told him, and he didn't cry uncle. He can't. I said, you're never going to agree with what I'm saying, Seth, because if I'm correct, you're out of job.
Well, to give
who needs to listen for radio signals?
Exactly.
If they're here,
So let me tell you about SETI. I did my due diligence reading about SETI. They're looking for alien radio waves and other, things that they could receive. It takes 100,000 years for a radio wave to cross just the Milky Way, just our galaxy. And we've been broadcasting for about 100 years. Now, if there's a civilization out there that's 50,000 years ahead of us, hypothetically speaking, we're still not going to hear from them. There's 50,000 more years before those radio waves get here. Then you're talking the length of the universe. If it takes 100,000 years for a radio wave to cross the Milky Way, you could just go ahead and turn SETI off because you're not going to hear anything for any outside of that. That's crazy talk, Something would have to be millions of years more advanced to us, and it would have to be within our dimension and our timeline, So I don't quite understand SETI. Maybe in the 80s I got it, the 90s, but now I don't get SETI, especially with James Webb.
It's very limited. It's limited, the scope of their project. Who knows if people are communicating with radio waves on other planets?
Right, exactly.
Communicating with light, I don't put much stock in SETI anymore.
Yeah, that was really like a real gamble there to just listen for radio waves and put the sort of capital behind it to do so. That was a little, maybe, I don't want to say they're being really cavalier with the capital of Americans, but come on. If we knew from Carl Sagan.
They did get the wow signal, though. Now, they did get the wow signal. Yeah, that was pretty interesting.
But we all, the possibility of that being a nearby asteroid and or a comet that put that out, because we know bodies in space create radio waves. We know this. The wow signal could have been any number of things that were close by. And it didn't last long, and it was never replicated. If it was replicated, we heard it more than once, maybe even 5 times, sure. But like what Bob said, they could be communicating with light. We're even considering that. We are considering it. And here's the other thing too. Why is it in the best interest of corporations for us to have full disclosure for alien life and greater technology? Because if you have something that can sustain energy indefinitely without using any resources, there's going to be a lot of companies that are going to go down real fast, because, think about your electric bill. Think about your internet bill. Think about these bills you're paying because we need resources to keep these things operating. If you were to bring something here that would eliminate that, it'd be a corporate collapse. Like people ask a friend of mine, he's like, you think we're ever going to cure cancer? I'm like, we probably already have the means to do it, but look at the scale of that business. That's a full industry by itself. There's buildings, there's machines, there's doctors, there's nurses. Everyone specializes in that particular disease. If Earl Grey Anderson tomorrow said, I got this pill I made, it's going to cure cancer instantly, you're shutting down a whole industry. They'll kill you. You will get killed before that happens.
Probably.
It's unfortunate.
It's interesting you said that because I don't know if you remember the story in 2019. But there was a billionaire in Toronto. He owned a pharmaceutical company. Him and his wife were found hanging from their living room. No suspects, no evidence, no nothing. The medicine that his company produced was ivermectin. All right. So, maybe he didn't cooperate before the pandemic. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Wait, this medicine's going to prevent the pandemic that's coming. We got to get rid of this guy. I mean, listen, if tomorrow, I put this in your head too, because I get sinus problems. I have allergies. You know what I mean? I ended up getting COVID over the summer, 3 years after the fact, so I have sinus problems pretty regularly. I take Zyrtec, and most times if I get under the weather, I'll take like a Dayquil or some medication geared towards it. If Bob said, hey, I spent some time in a lab. I can now cure the common cold and/or the sinus problem. Bob would go missing tomorrow. Something like
They had battery powered cars in like the 1920s.
Yeah.
It's like, what happened to them?
Here's a better one for you, right? So view this, and I mean, not to get off subject, and at the end of the day, this is just a conversation between people that people get to eavesdrop on. But let's do this math real quick. I have another fascination with ancient Greeks and ancient Romans. The inventions, these unbelievable. There's a thing in Rome made of concrete that during the Roman era they made. It's still curing, but it's sound. It's structurally sound. It's a massive undertaking for concrete then. Not only is it a better form of concrete than what we have.
Yes, they had better concrete.
But it's more stable. And so now you go to the ancient Greeks and you see their inventions. They had the clock that was running on water and it was fairly accurate. And then you have all these philosophers and all these wonderful inventions coming from ancient times, and they stopped. And then I had to ask, well, what the hell happened? Turned out religion happened.
I was gonna say,
yeah, they shut it down. That's the work of the devil. Like, if we didn't have religion intervene with that technology and that train of thought from then till now, even like so most of the planets and stars were named by ancient Persians. Why did they stop looking to the sky? Why are they not doing astronomy anymore? Well, religion. If we didn't have the intervention of religion and the power because really what it is, it's about power and control, we would be 2,000 years ahead of what our technology is right now. Can you imagine what we would have going right now if that didn't happen?
I had heard that if the library at Alexandria had not burned down, we would have been on the moon for 600 years already.
Easily. 100%. I don't doubt that one bit.
What a loss. What a great loss.
Look at the evolution of the cell phone in a decade.
Oh yeah.
The minute I bought my phone brand new last year, it's already obsolete. It was obsolete when I bought it. So when it comes to technologies that we're seeing in our atmosphere performing the way they're performing, and our government's quote unquote disclosure we should say acknowledgement, we're never really going to know. There's no way they're going to let us know, because there's this thing called industry, and when you lose control of industry, and a lot of consider this money. What is money? It's paper saying we owe you this amount of money in gold. We don't even have the amount of gold needed to equate to the money. Why is gold even valuable? Well, it's pretty and it's from the gods, and we'll give you some of my pretty shiny stuff for whatever your farm goods and your water. And that's how we got into the idea of exchange and having currency. So it's a creepy thing we're sitting at right now, because we're at this line in the sand where we know there's these things moving around atmospheres, and whether it be dimensional or from outer space, what do we tell the people, and how do we say it in such a way where we don't lose control in industry? That's the real question,
Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. It'll change everything. I mean, if disclosure actually did happen, next year, and they did bring out the exotic materials, and they did present, let's say that they do have a working craft at S4, and that Bob Lazar wasn't full of it,
right.
It would change everything. It would change change energy, the way we do that. I mean, all the power bases that we have, any reliance on Saudi Arabia would be not needed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, digital cameras. How often do you see the Kodak logo or the Fujifilm blimp anymore?
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, those are two that's an industry that just kind of tanked. People that were smart, or people that are smart, I think would probably have something else that they can divert their corporation to, if they work it out right, and they have the right consultants and stuff. You're not going to see societal financial collapse if it's done right.
Right.
If it's though, that people are comfortable with their fortunes, they don't want anything to change, and the trains as long as the trains arrive on time, you know.
Well,
You
yeah.
can
I mean,
put up
look
with a
at
lot.
the early 2000s when music was going digital and
Oh,
CDs were
destroyed the music industry.
100% did. Like,
Napster, remember
yeah, yeah,
Napster?
Yeah, that little guy
yeah.
started Napster.
And so,
That he was how the kingdoms fell. I mean, nobody was prepared for it. I mean, we were all, you know, as a old musician, you know, I was just bashing my head against the wall of the music scene in Los Angeles. I was in the right place. I was maybe a little too old to be doing what I, you know, but I sure put a lot of effort into it. But it just collapsed, and you know, that was the whole thing. Is you wanted to get a record contract.
right.
What's that?
Yes, because, you know, and the thing is, when you had the digital age come in, for artists to make money, it wasn't on album sales anymore. You had to do concerts, a lot
Correct.
of concerts, you know.
Yeah.
And now do this, you know, do this math. You know, an intelligent being comes from wherever it may come and says, "Look, we have sustainable energy. It's clean. It's not going to damage your planet. It's everlasting." There's no way they're going to tell the public that.
But I mean, wasn't that what Corso talked about with Roswell? That's where we got Kevlar from, and
Mhm.
Allegedly,
and
yeah.
solid state circuitry, and you know what I mean.
The you know, Kevlar, the idea of Kevlar, really, if you look at the ancient Persians and the some of the materials they were using, they were kind of moving towards that really hard fabric for battle. They weren't like when they were fighting the Greeks had, you know, armor, like metal alloyed armor, where the Persians were using lots of fabrics that were tightly woven together. May not stop a direct blow from a sword, you know, point forward, but it could absorb the impact from a side blow. And then you fast forward to what we have today. You know, imagine if we gave the ancients Kevlar.
Yeah. Well, Corso is an interesting guy, and I think that I actually do believe Corso. I think Bill Burns kind of fabricated some stuff in the day after Roswell. And I like Bill, very nice guy. If you're listening, Bill, sorry, but it is kind of known that even Corso himself said the first 3 chapters of that book you may as well just throw out. I don't know who he was writing about, but after you get past the first 3 chapters, it's pretty accurate. And I, you know, I don't know. I mean, it goes along with my mom's old narrative. A lot of stuff in that book was just like, you know, had the underground bases in it. It had a lot of stuff that sounded very familiar to me.
Yeah.
Interesting book.
I got to ask this question too.
Kind of
I get
around with it.
I get hit with this a lot in the friend circle. And I, you know, I have my own answer to it about Area 51 and SR4 and some of these other bases. But at this point of time right now, I think Area 51 is definitely like a smokescreen, right? Because, you know, all eyes are on it now. Bob, let me ask Bob, do you think that base connects to other bases underground that were on that subject?
Well, yes, I do. I mean, if you go all the way back to Reagan and the MX missile system, that was the mobile underground missile system. Always thought there was more than that. I mean, you hear stories that they have trains underground at these military bases that go from Los Angeles to San Diego to Dulce
Washington.
base. Yeah, that submarines have a passage underneath the United States from the Pacific all the way to St. Louis. All right, I don't know if you ever heard that one. That our submarines can traverse half the United States underground. There was a MUFON witness in New Jersey going like 9-10 years ago that I had one of my earlier cases, and he was telling me that he was an architect and he was employed in New Mexico to build an underground room for the military that was on springs, as if it could withstand an asteroid impact or a nuclear explosion. So without doubt, I'd say the entire southwestern United States is a network of tunnels and possibly mini cities, you know, for scientists and military.
Yeah, I was thinking, you know, something that caught my attention, and so one of the places I'm going to definitely travel is the indigenous American population in New Mexico, and they're reporting like well-hidden ventilation all through the plains. And then you see the video of some of it, and I don't know what to make of it. There was a plant, or it looked like a plant, but below the surface, there is definitely a circle there that has grading over it. And why in the middle of a desert, what the hell is that doing there? And so I have a responsibility not to take it, as I hear it. I got to go look. It's on Native American territory. I don't know what the permissions are for me to get there. I'm sure I'm going to have to call someone, but I have to go look at that because that had a profound effect on me. Why is there ventilation in the middle of a desert? What is it ventilation for? I mean, it's mind blowing. And so you would think that's an isolated incident until you hear in parts of Texas where they uncovered somebody was digging and they found what looked like the lining of concrete walls as they were digging for, I don't remember what it was, but they found it. So when I hear people ask me questions like, do you think there's an underground transit system moving from SR, Area 51 and other military bases? I have to say yes. You would have to think that we would this isn't even current. Let's go back to Kennedy, the threat of nuclear war, and 100% if they have bases in the mountains to preserve the upper echelon of our government, you would have to think they'd have to be able to travel between the locations. They're not going to all fly to. If you have missiles coming in, you don't have enough time to hop on a plane and go to a mountain. Everyone in every state that represents that upper echelon has to have their own means to get underground. And so I don't base it upon the what if, rather, the logic. Logically, it makes sense. And then again, you see that picture, that ventilation in the desert. I'm blown away by that. That really put a stop to it. So let's talk, before we close out, let's talk about moving forward, gentlemen. What projects are you working on coming up here soon, Bob?
Well, what I usually start to do at the end of the year is I start to look for the best cases of interest from 2023 that I would present next year. And right now, it seems that 2023 is trending towards animal mutilations, not only cattle, but just one case in particular I just want to run by it because it was fascinating. Teenage girl's looking out her window at a vacation cottage in Delaware, and there's forest in the back, and she sees this blue metallic cylinder come over the forest, stop, drop a chunk of meat, and then she sees a coyote come up to grab the meat. It gets sucked up into this cylinder. She can actually hear from her position the bones crunching. It drops the dead coyote out. It leaves. She goes out to look at the coyote. No blood, no bones, nothing but a hide. All right. She comes back in the house. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. Her mother says, "Where were you?" And she says, "I was out in the forest." She goes, "You've been gone for 4 hours." So we have a very peculiar coyote mutilation, all right, where the actual craft is seen and we have missing time. And then in Oklahoma, there were the cattle mutilations. In Texas, there were the cattle mutilations. And there were actually 2 bird abductions this year. So it's very strange what's going on with animals this year in 2023. So that I'm in the early stages of putting my presentation together, but that's the interesting cases that I've found so far.
Earl, what do you have moving forward?
Oh, goodness. Well, I imagine I'll probably be doing the experiencer workshops at the symposium again. So I'm always on the lookout for this year. I had some really interesting cases where screen memories were used or screen images. I had one case that I presented where these two, and it wasn't my case, it was my police detective out here. And he's turned out to have quite the propensity for the high strangeness cases, which kind of tickles me. I didn't know that he would go for that, being a police detective, kind of just the facts man. But he had a case where these 2 women had gotten out of the Navy and they were doing a cross-country trip. And they were in Utah and they saw 30 jackrabbits that were like 4-foot tall jackrabbits in the middle of the road, blocking the road from them. They stopped the car. They got out of the car and there was a flash overhead. The jackrabbits all turned at once quite dramatically. And they were suddenly not rabbits anymore. There was a bunch of black eyes staring back at them. They had 4 hours, I believe it was, of missing time. They came to in a diner, a state over. The mileage didn't show up on the odometer of their car, and the one woman didn't even remember that this happened until her friend mentioned it recently, and then the whole memory came barreling back, and she almost got PTSD from suddenly remembering all this that had happened to her. But a very strange case, you know.
Earl, did that case have drawings, right? Didn't they draw the rabbits?
Yeah, they were
Okay,
drawing.
we got to talk about that case. All right,
Yeah,
I was looking at that one too. We'll talk about that.
yeah, because that's one of the best ones of the year.
Yeah.
I love the case. I even did like a artistic representation, uh, as I'm wont to do sometimes, of a rabbit with two lines of DNA going up to a shiny object in the sky. But it's a good case. You can use my artwork too if you want.
Thank you.
Yeah, the witness has recently gone public, by the way, so there will be no problem with her, having us share that case out there.
I'm going to touch on that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot. So I did for a while. I did that little series on abduction a year ago, and it caught. I had to dive deep in a lot of study. I find a lot of people, Whately Stryber being one of them, where an owl was like very prevalent to him. I've heard other people utilize other animals, but now you're saying rabbits, and they're all the same, black eyes. Mm-hmm. And you have to wonder at what level they use the image of something that is not so frightening to us to replace what it is that we're really looking at. Because this is something in science that we talk about. The idea of this, replacing memories or removing memories, so this way you don't have to live with the horror of what you see.
Mask memories.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what's interesting, in a lot of these abduction cases, that the alien or whoever the entity is, they always tell the witness, you will not remember this. But the witness almost always remembers it.
Well,
yeah.
It happens to us in like, there's people that get surgery done and they're under anesthesia and they could somewhat recall things, and it's frightening to them. There's no guarantee, no matter what technology, because let's face it, the human brain is the most complex computer on our planet currently. And until we come with something better, we still don't have it fully mapped. And the other thing too with abduction, and I'm going to say this for a lot of people that listen. I have a lot of people say, well, abduction sounds fantastic. It's nonsense, et cetera, et cetera. Listen, we abduct all the time. We abduct animals all the time in the name of science. The difference between us and the animals is that we get to go home. The animals don't, and they don't always survive. So at the science level, abduction makes sense because you're not going to take one human being in one period of time and learn about its evolution. It's not possible. You would have to conduct tremendous amount of experiments to even watch the evolution of anything biological. And if you have any idea of perhaps maybe crossbreeding or making a hybrid so you could survive on our planet, breathe our gas and adjust to our gravity, that I don't care how sophisticated your technology is, you're talking millennia before you have success. It's not going to happen anytime soon. But the replacement image that these people go through, I've been reading a lot about that. And a lot of these people in Alaska that had these issues and upstate New York always almost recall owls with solid black eyes. There were people in Mississippi that I was reading these studies, and they almost, for whatever reason, they're seeing bears with black eyes. And I think it's them giving us an image that we find acceptable.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I can think of.
I wonder if going back to the idea of maybe they park a factory ship somewhere in the solar system, and they churn out these gray beings. Wouldn't they assess the intelligent life form that's on the planet, assess what way it would be the best way to be mobile on the planet, I mean, we don't even know if our visitors have 2 legs, a torso, and 2 arms, a head, and 2 black eyes.
Sure.
I mean, that may just be, the construct that they build, that's best for interacting with us. They may think that maybe they thought that the little gray guys would be comforting to us because they sort of looked like us instead of an octopus or whatever.
Yeah, some
bipedal actually look like.
A bipedal being is more acceptable because there's planets, exoplanets that are Earth-like, but they're large, so their gravity would be so much greater, and their atmosphere would be a little bit more. It'd be hard, even if it had the same oxygen levels as here. Let's say it had the same chemical makeup, identical. It would still be a tremendous overtaking to go there because the gravity would be crushing. So I was reading a couple times, and there's a couple things on YouTube I watch where if we're going to send a robot there, we got to send it there to represent what it can or cannot do there, right? We can't send a bipedal robot to that planet. We'd have to have something that could withstand the gravity, that would be wider based, that could travel there. And when I say wider based, like the rover we have on Mars now is huge. Size of a car.
Yeah.
Well, for this planet, we'd have to send something the size of a 747 because and it would have to be constructed in such a way that could handle the gravity and then cover the ground, much larger ground to cover. For this planet, and I like that you said that. Let's say we find a planet somewhere, we want to go explore it, and they're squid-like. They're trapped in their environment. It's all water. Well, we would have to use something that would be able to go to that planet and do okay as far as research. We'd have to. It's so coming here to Earth with our gravity and all the measurements. A bipedal robot indoor significant biological mix would have to be bipedal and a certain weight and size, and it would also have to be within the budget. Let's be honest. So if you're mass producing gray alien, I've had a discussion with other people in this field, the gray alien is a perfect thing to rent out. If there's other species that found us, they can be like, listen, you don't have to go down there. The oxygen's, you can't breathe that air, and the gravity's a little strange.
One size fits all.
Yeah, you can
that too. It's a spacesuit for the soul.
Well, yeah, you could rent this out, and then we could actually upload your consciousness too, and you go down and do all the science you want. I mean, and the people down there know what they are. They're accepting it now, so it's the perfect unit to rent out. It's our brand new 2023 gray.
See, I like the way you're thinking here, Adam. I think that way too a lot. So,
well,
hey, listen, hey guys, all right. While you were discussing that, I went to the MUFON CMS, 134,000 cases, right? How many times? And I did a keyword search for rabbit. How many times do you think that rabbit showed up in 132,000 cases?
I don't know.
111. Okay,
right.
So then I did a key search for owl. How many times do you think owl showed up? Earl, we're into patterns. That's why I do this.
Yeah.
How many times do you think owl showed up?
I'm gonna guess a pretty significant number. As many times I read it without the MUFON database, it's got to be up there in like at least the thousands.
20,812.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I read so many. That's why I brought it to your attention. Like I read a bunch of these when I did the abduction series. I had to do the research. That word came up more often than none. Owl, 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 every time. And I was like, what is with the owl? And then I'm laying, of course, this is when I figured out. It's always when I have to go to sleep. It's when I'm laying in bed, I have something important the next day, and it's like, there it is. I know. That's when you think about it. If you listen to the episode I did with Kathleen Martin, in the beginning of the episode, I discussed a dream I had as a result of all that research. The profound effect of my mind was unreal. I had a literal dream that was so real that when I woke up, I repeated the dream to myself over and over again to make sure I didn't forget a detail, because I've never had a dream affect me so strongly in my life. But yeah, the owl thing, I don't know. That 20,000 plus, that's...
I mean, owls are popular in the culture, so a lot of people read that. So there probably is bleed in from, people who just are experiencing something because they read about it. All right, but 20,000 is still a lot.
That's a lot of owls.
Yeah, out of
Mike Cleland. I mean,
yeah,
he's written a couple books on owls and the phenomenon.
Well, if
he
you
spoke at the symposium, he was great. It was good to hear Mike.
You remember the movie Communion, right? From the, I think.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That movie scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. Really did. Like, I was like terror. And, you know, Christopher Walken's, when he wants to be a creepy actor, he could hit the hole. You know what I mean?
He's the best. He's the best.
So he could sell a character. And I watched that movie as a kid. I snuck it, I should say. And it was scary. It scared me but there was an owl in that movie, or am I wrong on that?
It's been
there is an owl, and it's in his book too. He talks about owls.
And then there's another movie from 2010, and the name of the movie escapes me, but it's about abduction as well. And there's an owl in that movie. The Third Kind, is it? I don't remember. I'll have to look the name of the movie up. I watched it with a friend, Tara, and it scared both of us. You know, and it was daylight. So
it's just one of those repeating memes that are in ufology.
Yeah, it's
you know,
it's
the
just
owl
there.
has a powerful mythological background as well, not just wisdom and who's the goddess of the hunt? I think has the owl on her shoulder. Artemis, I think.
Yeah, that movie's called The Fourth Kind, by the way. It was The Fourth Kind. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it featured an owl in there as well.
Mm.
Well, anyway, I'm going to talk to you guys in post. I got some stuff to share with you. So those of you listening, I'm going to say good day, good evening, good night, or whatever it is for you, and we'll talk to you again soon.